Before I start the video, I just wanna address something. Some of my past PJ Masks videos have been pretty negative, and it might give you the impression that I hate the show, and I don't, okay. It's still one of my favorite shows of all time. With that being said, the show is not perfect, far from it in fact, and season 6 wasn't their best, to put it lightly. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but this season had so much potential, so many good ideas, yet the writers barely did anything with them. In fact, now that I think about it, I think that's the biggest flaw with the show as a whole. Whenever they come up with a really compelling idea for their story and characters, they never utilize them properly, causing them to fall flat in the end. I know the show is episodic and doesn't have an overarching story like, say, Gravity Falls, but still, it's really disappointing to see these really good ideas so underutilized. And that brings us to the topic of today's video, Octobella. I have very mixed feelings on this character. On one hand, she's generally a fun antagonist, but on the other hand, as time went on, she just became so much more two-dimensional, which sucks, because she was one of the most unique villains in the show, and she used to be one of my favorite characters. Plus, judging by the way she was written in season 4, she could have been the most complex villain in PJ Masks. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Octobella was first introduced in the season 4 episode, simply titled, Octobella. At first, she seemed to be very nice and befriends the PJ Masks. But in the end, it turns out that she's a villain and she tries to kidnap Gecko and trap him in his garden forever. Now, believe it or not, Octobella has an actual reason for hating the PJ Masks, particularly Gecko. All the other villains hate them simply because they're good guys and they always foil their plans, but Octobella has a personal grudge against them. So, what's her motivation? Well, watch this scene.
Hey Gecko! Octobella might be able to find you some more of that power pondweed! That'd be cool! Power pondweed? I found it in a moat a while ago. It gave me new powers. Octobella, are you okay? I'm just having so much fun.
For those of you who don't watch the show, in the season 2 episode, Pondweed Power, Gecko accidentally bumps into magic pondweed that temporarily gives him new powers to stop Romeo. And apparently, it belonged to Octobella, and that's why she hates him the most. Now look at Octobella's face. She was very shocked when she heard that. Which begs the question, if Catboy never mentioned the pondweed, would Octobella still be a villain? Overall, this episode does a pretty good job at introducing Octobella's character. The reason why Octobella was my favorite character was because she was so interesting to think about. From her debut episode, I kept wondering, why is she so ruthless? Why does the pondweed mean so much to her? See what I mean? She was such a compelling character back in season 4, because she encouraged the audience to think. To prove my point, let's take a look at another Octobella episode, Splashy Splash. In this episode, Octobella tricks Owlette into reading a fake Flossie Flash comic, but in reality, it's a portal to her secret lair, where she then traps her, and forces her to be her best friend. And she doesn't just make Owlette into a servant or something, she actually tries to get her to play dolls with her. When I saw this episode, I came up with a theory. Maybe Octobella isn't really a bad person, she's just misunderstood. She does genuinely want to make friends, she just doesn't know how to. After all, in her debut episode, she mentions that it's pretty lonely down in the moat, and her only true friend is her shrimp sidekick, Percival. Also in her debut episode, after she kidnaps Gecko, she genuinely tries to be friends with Catboy and Owlette. She doesn't try to kidnap them, and she still does like them. But after they find out what's going on, they ditch her to save Gecko. Maybe she's not actually a villain, she's just angry, and she sees herself as the good guy and the PJ Masks as the bad guys. But no, in the episode, Magnet in the Moat, she just admits to being a villain, throwing all that emotional depth out the freaking window.
Oh, come back! I'm the underwater villain around here, not you!
Oh, but don't worry, it only gets worse from here. Look, I know what some of you are thinking. This is just a kid's show, it doesn't need to have emotional depth, and that theory sounds way too sad to be in a preschool show. This show airs on Disney Junior, which is the same network that aired The Lion Guard and Elena of Avalor. So, yeah, now let's talk about the season 4 finale. This is where all of the potential, and all that development, gets completely obliterated. In this episode, Octobella creates an army of bad bubbles that only takes things that Gecko likes. Later, Octobella pushes Gecko to his absolute limits. She takes his Gecko mobile, she kidnaps his friends, and she even takes his pet lizard. He gets so mad that he uses all his strength and throws Octobella into outer space. Nah, I'm just kidding, he just throws her out of the moat. Octobella, you are very lucky that this is a kid's show, cause if it wasn't, Gecko probably would have killed you. Anyways, earlier in the episode, Percival asks Octobella why she hates Gecko so much, and she explains that it's mostly because of the whole pondweed thing, but it turns out that there's another reason why she hates him, and it's because he doesn't let her be mean to him.
It's nothing to do with pondweed, you silly shrimp. It's the stuff he's done since then, like not let me be mean to him. I don't like that.
What? That doesn't make any sense. Do I even have to explain why this is bad writing? They gave her a legitimate reason to hate Gecko, and that gave depth to her character, and now, you're telling me that she hates him because he won't let her be mean to him. What kind of motivation is that? And what makes it worse is that this scene, where Octobella and Percival have a conversation about Gecko, and Percival trying to defend him while still being loyal to Octobella, could have led to some great character development. But in typical PJ fashion, it never goes anywhere. You could remove this scene from the episode, and nothing would change. In the end, everyone but Gecko gets trapped in a bubble, and now they're stuck in outer space. So Gecko and Octobella agree to work together to save the day. So you'd think Octobella would gain a little respect for him. Just a little bit. No. She just goes right back to being evil. And it just doesn't add up. In an earlier episode, Octo Trouble, Gecko saves Octobella from Romeo, and look how she reacts.
You're safe, Octobella. You were so nice to me. What a horrible thing to do.
By that reaction, you can tell that she's a little bit grateful, but she just doesn't want to admit it. But here, she's just evil. She doesn't show a bit of gratitude at all. Heck, the only reason why she agreed to help Gecko was so that she could get to safety. It's almost like they were planning a redemption arc for her, but it got scrapped for whatever reason. If Gloop the third of all villains can get redeemed, why can't she? Her motivations are right there. She was isolated with her only friend being a shrimp, and Gecko stole her pondweed. Granted, it was by accident, but still. Now, in the more recent seasons, Octobella is just a villain. That's it. No motivation, no complexity, she's just a bad guy. In fact, her reason for hating Gecko was pretty much forgotten about. And now, she does things that any other villain would do. Let's talk about two more notable Octobella episodes before I go. In the episode, A Percival Problem, Octobella treats Percival like absolute garbage. If she just teases him from time to time, that's okay, friends do that sometimes. But she just physically and emotionally abuses him. Calling him names, pushing him away, and she even claims that it's his fault she always loses to the PJ Masks. That is just horrible. Isn't Percival your only true friend? Why are you treating him like this? Anyways, it gets to the point where they get into a physical altercation with each other, and Octobella gets into her robot suit to attack Percival. Seriously, I don't think I've ever seen such a toxic friendship in a show made for preschoolers. So then, Percival steals one of her crystals and creates giant tentacles to attack the city. Gecko encourages Octobella to apologize, and she had the audacity to say this to him.
Me? What have I ever done to you?
I know this is meant to be funny, but to me, who's been invested in this character since her debut, and was actively rooting for her to change, it's just insulting. In the end, Octobella does apologize to him, and then she says this.
This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Oh, so I guess they're friends now. Nope. In the next episode she's in, she just goes right back to being evil. To be fair, if they just redeemed her like that, it would be very rushed, but why did they even add that line to begin with? It just feels so inconsistent. Now let's talk about one more Octobella episode, Wolfie Treasure Hunt. Okay, this episode isn't specifically about Octobella, it's more focused on the Wolfies, but she does play a major role. In this episode, the Wolfies, Rip and Howler, steal a bunch of random things for some sort of scavenger hunt game, and Kevin secretly returns them behind their backs. Later, They even steal some of Octobella's pondweed, and understandably, she gets furious. When Kevin tries to return the pondweed, Octobella kidnaps him, and takes him to her lair, the same thing she did to Gecko. Kevin probably didn't even know it was hers, and he did try to return it, but Octobella doesn't care. She's just too mad about something she cares about being stolen, and that's understandable. But the episode decides to villainize her for it. Seriously. I know it wasn't right for her to kidnap Kevin, but you can at least understand why she did it. You could have had the Wolfies at least apologize to Octobella for stealing her pondweed. Would it have worked? Probably not, but at least try. At the end of the day, Octobella had so much potential to be a complex and compelling character, but the show completely squandered it. There were so many opportunities to explore her character, to give her depth, or even to set up a redemption arc. But instead, the writers gradually stripped away everything that made her unique, reducing her to just another generic villain. Her motivations were forgotten, her relationships were inconsistent, and any chance of meaningful development was thrown out the window. In the end, she became a shadow of what she could have been, and that's what makes her downfall so disappointing. Anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know if you want me to make more character analysis videos in the future. And until next time, party on.